Range DPS. They're a mystery to some, they're a treasure to others.
And a pain to the rest, god damn it. But listen, it's still pretty fun to play all range DPS. Not in the same.
It's debatable. This is why we're making this video. So to play or not to play these range DPS here, this is all about it. It's not a meta-analysis.
Oh, no.
It's not like, Warcraft logs and subcreation u.gg. Although we are looking at performance in some capacity, we are looking at, rotation mechanics, gameplay, immersion, feeling, all of that combined.
Some of them are, let's say, noob friendly. Some of them are easier to get into and less punished by the mechanics and learning into the season. So that's kind of what we're gonna vibe with. And of course, everything else will be pretty much in tune.
Now, when we rock our range DPS, our PCs are running smooth as butter because our browser is 447 Mythic Atom level and it doesn't eat all the RAM and CPU like other browsers do, no?
We've been using Opera GX for years now, and think about it. On top of pushing keys and rating, we're using OBS to stream and record and have all sorts of tabs open. I'm talking Wowhead, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, MMO, Champion, and this used to lag the PC with other browsers all the time. But in all fairness, with Opera GX, you can limit both the CPU and RAM with just a couple of clicks.
Not only that, but you can customize almost everything in your browser, from colors, buttons, and over 180 mods with themes, animations, sounds. I mean, we all love Dragonflight here. We love fantasy, and we were kind of tired with all the boring browsers, right? I mean, what's cooler than having an actual dragon spitting fire on your browser? It's amazing. Since we're all riding dragons all day, it's just the perfect fit. That's the medieval mod, and it's freaking epic. Oh, and check out the cool sounds too. Listen. Isn't that cool? And I know that most people are scared to switch their browsers because they have their history there with their logins and their cookies and all of that. But listen, you can easily import everything from your old browsers with Opera GX's import tool. Not to mention that it's compatible with every single Google Chrome extension too. So what are you waiting for? Say bye to CPU and RAM overload. Say bye to the boring browsers. Click the link in the description to download Opera GX right now, because now is the best time. Thank you, Opera GX, for sponsoring the video. Now let's get into Affliction Warlock. So Affliction is a love-hate relationship for some.
Oh yeah.
I can see it being a very, very well-rounded spec in the very near future, I would say.
Oh yeah, the 10.1.5 changes are definitely gonna be good with Affliction. Now it's a little bit of a hit and miss.
Yeah.
Because right now you're probably gonna, we've played together when I was Affliction. It takes a while to like get the damage out, and that's not something that you particularly want to do. You won't be able to take full advantage of Affliction if you're in a party with a lot of like super blasters, like Reds, like Havocs, like Furies, like Arms, like stuff like that. And it might feel a little bit awkward. In raids, although it's still pretty good, you have a really nice rotation. You do have to juggle quite a couple of things, and that's probably going to remain in 10.1.5 as well. It's just that 10.1.5 it's a little bit simpler. So if we're talking about this right now, I would recommend...
We keep into account that this will be, because I think...
If we're taking 10.1.5 into account, then I think Affliction is a solid A tier.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. You're gonna have a lot of build diversity. It is fun, and if you like the dot play style, you're definitely gonna vibe with Affliction. You have a lot of Warlock tools that are good for the content. Hellstones, Soulstones, we know how good those are, and yeah, it's pretty good.
All right. Boomkin, on the other hand, I think this will be a very strong recommendation. However, people would expect from me to like trash this pick. Listen, I do that for fun and giggles. It's all about how it looks, and I know you can put the glyph of stars or whatever it's called, and it's all fine and dandy.
Aesthetics. I mean, let's say aesthetics are important because we're gonna get to like shamans and stuff like that. So it kind of matters.
To some people, okay.
And I will give it, as a Boomkin enjoyer, I will give it to you. The fat chicken is meh. I think if they treated Boomkin the same that they treated Guardian, where you have like multiple styles of Boomkins, like For instance, I like the Zandalari one with like the crazy crow just flapping around.
Yeah, even the Kultiran has like this a little bit more serious vibe to it.
The drusty feel, like
Drust,
bones
yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff.
It just looks funny, but however that may be, not things like these are very subjective and they're not applicable to all people. But
outside of the aesthetics, Boomkin is actually a really fun spec to get into. It's way easier and less annoying to play than it was last season, and it is a very, I would say, kind of a relaxing. Like there are a lot of specs there that you just plant your feet and just hard cast. You hard cast some of the things with Boomkin, but it has a lot more tools to deal with. Oh, I have to move out of the circle now. I have to go there. At the end of the day, it's an okay the DPS spec. It might take a little while to get into because you are a druid. You want to, you know, whenever you get like something that you need to soak, you have to swap into bear. That's not something that a lot of DPSers have to do. You kind of have to take your druid utility into consideration. And if you like that, if you like to, you know, shapeshift, you want to prepare, you want to swap into cat to like zoom around, you want to swap to bear to like, you know, soak a big hit, that's really cool. Not a lot of people vibe with that, however, but I feel like the way that the damage is done, the ease of what you do in keys, because sure, you might still want you might still want to ramp up like Affliction would. It might be a little bit annoying, but you're not restricted by tanks moving things out of other things, and that's like so much better this season around. So I would probably still put it into A tier.
yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's one of the most unique specs to play in terms of its mechanics and how it works, and that's like a huge thing for us to like recommend the spec. It's like whenever a spec isn't cast your spells and look at mana, that's cool. Okay. Well, speaking of cast your spells and look at mana,
oh my god, dude.
Arcane Mage. Now, Arcane Mage is also looking at better times in 10.1.5. I would say all the mage specs are looking in better times, especially because of the Rune of Power change. I understand how some people like the current playstyle of Arcane. I've seen a lot of like vocal people like telling that, okay, it does do well. You can pull off big ass numbers. Like I think it's one of the biggest bursts, if not the biggest burst, whenever things align. But you do still have that turret playstyle that stay in the spot, and if you cannot stay in the spot, then you're gonna be really punished. And unfortunately, you have to deal with a lot of like knockbacks and moving around and jumping and things that force you out of your spot in the current meta of the gameplay.
That is like one aspect of Arcane. Another aspect is its actual rotation intricacies, because you do have probably one of the most complicated rotation into the game, and I think that's probably one of the reasons you're not really vibing too much with.
I feel it's just way too much over there. There is an appeal to like master something that is like very, very difficult, and I understand that. And there are other specs who have that as well, but I feel they're much more appealing. The current playstyle is what I have a problem with, because you can be complicated, but if I always have to like be stressed out because I cannot move, or I have to move while in the middle of my ramp up or whatever, then I don't find it as fun.
Yeah, so, I feel like there are other specs that are doing complicated rotations a little bit better. Yes. I was always a fan of how Arcane tries to play, and I'm a big proponent of moving from what it used to be, where you just spam Arcane Blast and then Arcane Barrage, and that was it. I think it's doing a little bit better in 10.1.5, but I still feel like you're pretty much set in stone with one particular build. And from what we're also hearing from the community, from you guys, you don't really like Radiant Spark, and not a lot of people like Radiant Spark. So I would probably put this a little bit lower, maybe a C tier.
C tier was my thought exactly as well. So it's not like 100% not to play. I mean,
you can play it.
It's in that category. Okay, play it, but okay, don't say we didn't warn you. It can be problematic.
It's kind of like that.
Okay, Beast Mastery Hunter. I think this spec by itself has all of the arguments needed to be recommended to like anyone.
Yes.
I don't want to go into that territory to like just point out that, oh my god, this is such an easy spec or whatever. Sure, it's easier.
I think we can move a little bit away from that meta, because it's no longer the same thing. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Beast Mastery Hunter has about a 6 to 8 global opener, which is not particularly simple. You have to do that stuff, and in AoE, target swapping to maintain barb shot is something that not a lot of people do, even though they criticize BM for being particularly simple. So there is some level of depth that I think is pretty much underestimated by people who trash BM for being too simple, and they're not doing the damage that they could do, especially, you know, maintaining the kill command resets. There's some that there. Outside of that, I think Beastmaster is probably one of the best specs anybody can play when it comes to range DPS. It has all of the advantage of range DPS and almost none of the weaknesses that the range DPS are actually probably no weaknesses that range DPS has. You will be able to stay safe. You'll be able to do all the mechanics. You're not punished by moving, clearly, because you do everything on the move.
That's the beast.
And if you're like a melee player, tank or healer, and you want to get into range and you're a little bit intimidated about every other spec, then I would strongly recommend trying out Beast Mastery. I think it's solid S tier for me.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, again, guys, so you've seen this one in S tier. It's not based on purely just this performance. It does well in general. So if you're gonna decide to play it, you're gonna have fun with it, and it's a totally to play spec.
For sure.
Demonology Warlock. This one, just by the pure fantasy of it, would be an S tier. It's like one of those specs where it fulfills that, you know, that need to summon in all types of demons and stuff. You have, you know, the Tyrant. You have like it's
Pit Lord.
The Pit, yeah, I was gonna say the Pit Lord as well. The fantasy is there. Mechanically,
it's actually really good. So there's one big drawback that I have for Demonology, and that's probably related to this tier, and that's because you're really tied into the tier set, into the trinkets, and into PI. You're still good without them, but you can definitely see a difference between Warlocks who have a couple of key elements into their performance and a couple who don't. This is talking about performance. So if you do play the demo and you want to get into it and you want those big numbers, keep in mind that you will need one or two good trinkets, you know, the Druid's Fragment or the Niltharian's Trinket. You'll definitely need the Force set. And if you also get a PI on top of it, you'll be the king of your DPSs.
You'll need a Shadow Priest.
You know, but outside of that, Demonology is probably one of the best, if not the best, Warlock specs in terms of design. It has a lot of build variety. You have 4 to 6 to 8 build versions that you can do with different tools and different playstyles, and that will keep you engaged. It is a little bit more, not necessarily complicated, but you are ranged and you have to hardcast a lot. But once again, in terms of Warlocks, outside of Affliction, which is a little bit of a wild card, I think Demonology does movement the best with all of the instant procs of Demon Bolt. And you have a build that's good, at least in this season, 10-1 and 10-1-5 as well. You have builds that go for all content. You're good in dungeons, you're good in raids. I think it's probably an S tier.
Okay, well, we'll put it into S tier if you want to play that Demonology. It's for sure. Definitely 100% to play. Destruction Warlock, on the other hand, it's similar story to like, I don't see its appeal as it was in the past. I feel like Demonology has gotten way more popularity appeal, let's say.
For sure. I think there's a couple of things to it. Well, first of all, let's talk about destruction in the perspective of 10-1, which for me in 10-1, I would probably put it into B tier. It does really good damage. So far right now, it's probably the best single target damage spec in the game, but its single target damage is very punished if you have to stop casting. This is the spec, probably even more so than Arcane, where you're punished if you don't cast.
Yeah.
The rotation and the damage windows that you get are so short that if you miss a global, you'll eventually drop 2 to 3 to 4 to 5k DPS noticeably against other Destruction Warlocks, and you'll end up dropping more and more the more you mess up your rotation. And that's, I feel like it's way too punished in expansion, where it feels like range just have to move a lot more than they had in the past.
This is what I was saying with Arcane as well. So you are basically, it's fine if you get punished in some capacity, because there always has to be like a risk versus reward type of thing.
Yeah.
But I feel in Destruction's case, like whenever you are forced to like do something or just get
losing
off,
about 10 to 20% damage is too much. However, in 10-1-5, it is getting a lot of changes to the talent, so this will bring a little bit of a hype back, because you're getting Crashing Chaos that's gonna be buffed, you're getting 2-minute Infernals. Hopefully the numbers are gonna be tuned where we can actually play it and not feel like we're losing too much. So I think it's still good, but I feel like it's a little bit maybe behind Affliction and Balance. Although it's a simple spec, put it into A tier. I think it's a good A tier spec, but keep in mind that you're gonna get punished a lot and you might hate your life if things move out of your rain of fire.
There's an asterisk over there. So again, we are kind of taking into account the 10-1-5 changes, like when we think of those, because this is like very close. If it's on 2 weeks or something like that.
Well, I mean, we're hoping. I think this week we should probably hear some news about it.
Okay, for sure. Next up, Fire Mage. This is 100% a to-play. What a shock, especially because we mentioned the 10-1-5 changes.
Definitely with the 10-1-5.
They are looking like positive all across the board. Now, sure, you still have a couple of problems, you know, dead talents like Living Bomb or whatever, but like the general talent changes for the mages make it work so much better with like specific Fire Mage talents in the talent tree for the spec. Hypothermia is like one example. Like when you have like the little procs of combustion, not the little procs of combustion, the little instant pyroblast or whatever.
Right,
Those the machine guns as well. Then you have like the new talent where you have like the reduction of combustion as well, which is really cool because in I forgot what the name of it is, but basically like your flame strikes, your pyroblast, whatever, reduce the cooldown of combustion by 1.25 seconds. No, not kindling. No, it's a different one. The searing something.
They change the names all the time.
The thing is, it goes really well with a different talent from the general tree. Not to mention that now you have alternatives. You basically have an alternative to SKB, which some people really did not enjoy. I understand some other people really enjoyed it, but hey, it's nice to have options. The gameplay is still bombastic. I feel you have a lot more access to your combustion, and you're not just. Not to mention having flame strength baseline and cauterized baseline.
Oh my God, finally,
you know, you're not getting punished for like going to like a single target build, but you cannot really hit anything in AoE and vice versa. So it's looking very good for fire mages. It's very fun. I'm gonna have to play.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we were recommending Fire Mage way before the good changes as well, and everything that you like about Fire Mage is basically improved. Like, I'm a fan of Sunking, but it was a little bit annoying. They're making it better in 10.15. And there are people that just want flame strike
also bake pyroclasm into that as well. So it's like whenever you hardcast that pyroblast, it's gonna hit hard and also activate that combustion. Now it's looking good, very good. Definitely to play spec
for sure.
Okay, Frost Mage again. All mages are getting the quote-unquote reworks for 10.15. I feel Fire Mage is like still probably good if you enjoyed the playstyle. I'm not like too convinced that they're done yet or that they have achieved what they set out to do. There's still things to be looked at Frost Mage.
I think also speaking from a casual mage enjoyer, I think Frost Mage is probably the easiest spec to get into when it comes to mage. It teaches you a couple of things with mage, and it feels like it's a little bit less punished than definitely than an arcane. Not too sure about fire because
Fire Mage doesn't care, man.
Yeah, Fire Mage doesn't really care. You might care if things are moved out of your Frozen Orb and Blizzard, but I feel like that's a good middle ground for people to get into. Range DPS specs that have ground effects, because Devastation Warlock is gonna care a lot more. But I feel like Frost Mage has that simple vibe to it. It has that quintessential mage vibe to it. I mean, you've probably seen Jaina in a couple of cinematics and thought, man, I want to throw some ice around. And I do think that I would definitely recommend. If somebody would be interested in Mage, but they weren't really sure what to, I'd probably send them to Frost first.
So an A tier for Frost
sure.
Mage?
I would put it in front of Affliction, though.
Okay, so in front of Affliction, all right. Keep it in the front of the A tier. Definitely convinced to like, okay, do play the Frost Mage and the Fire. Marksmanship Hunter. This is an interesting one because I always would prefer survival over marksman, but that's personal preference. And this is a biased tier list because it's something we enjoy and we do not enjoy. How about you?
I think marksmanship did receive a couple of changes. So far in Dragonflight, the marksmanship playstyle has been really fun. It has been really explosive in AoE, but it feels like that's been tuned down a little bit. And although single target has been buffed, and that's really cool.
Crazy.
There are a couple of things that are really cool. Like marksmanship is the only spec that you can outrange a lot of the mechanics. Like you have at least 40-yard range to 50-yard range, depending on how much gear you have from your mastery. You can just outrange everything, and it's ridiculous how hilarious that is when everybody dodges and you're just at range and shooting that. Yeah. However, I do feel like there's a little bit more skill involved with marksmanship that could be a little bit of a barrier of entry for some people.
For sure.
It's not complicated, right? It's not difficult, but
definitely more than BM. Let's just put the things into perspective here. So we would recommend BM because it's like very like one of the, if not the best spec, entry-level spec for any type of content in World of Warcraft. On the other spectrum, you have Marksmanship Hunter, who does have a lot more intricacies to it and gets punished in some capacity. So I think
I would put it into B tier.
B tier would be
it's a little bit below the A tier spec.
B tier means like, okay, sure, it is a to-play, but yeah, take it with a little bit of grain of salt.
The pros and cons are kind of the same. It's kind of like a neutral zone.
We're not like 100% convinced, but it's not really. It doesn't have that many negatives for us to not recommend playing it. Okay, Devastation Evoker.
The lizards.
I would call this an even easier spec than BM Hunter, and this one can pull out some big numbers. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. Again, I have no problem if a spec is easy mode. I have a problem when it becomes like boring, numbing your mind easy. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's. I don't think it's that. I think they did a pretty good job in 10.1 at putting a little bit of more love into the talents of Devastation,
Yes.
and likely we're gonna see that at least one more time throughout Dragonflight. I think they're doing this to specs that are a little bit brand new, have a little bit of just that one thing missing, and I think Devastation is a good intro to a fast-paced, very mobile range spec. Sure, I mean we're not gonna go into the aesthetics because that topic has been chewed up and
I'm not
spat
putting this
out.
into 8 tier. I'm telling you right now, this is no
No. It's definitely a good spec. You're doing a lot of damage. You're bringing a lot of things to the party, and you've played with some lizards, man. Where do you see this?
Yeah. I see this into a B tier. Because I know you want it in S or A tier, but I cannot get over the looks of it. I'm sorry. So when I'm gonna make this argument again. We made it in multiple videos on to play or not to play.
Sure.
If I don't enjoy what I'm seeing, I don't care about its mechanics. I don't care about the spell effects or whatever. That thing looks like it's like malnutritioned or something. I'm not gonna enjoy myself. This is a game. This is something visual once again, and the visual information has to be at least on par with your preferences or for us, for me. I'm sure you don't like the stimulation. You said you've grown with it, but shut up, you don't like it.
That is one reason why I'm not enjoying the drag theater. Its animation is fine, but I kind of feel surrounded by all these dragons. I feel like I'm not really.
So yeah, we're not saying that not to play. It's still in a B tier, so this means definitely recommended to play, but. If you're like us, you're probably not going to enjoy the way how it moves and it looks and whatever, and it's a little bit more subjective, more on the surface thing. But if you enjoy big numbers and like easy to get into, sure, it's a blast. Go for it. Elemental Shaman. On the opposite side of the spectrum, like you have like different races that can play this, but regardless of the race that you would choose to play an elemental shaman, I think once again you have access to like the most visually and auditive appealing things any spec could bring. It's just so cool to play.
They even upgraded all of this in Dragonflight with the lightning rod talent, where you can just put an earthquake down and one of the mobs get charged with lightning, and you kind of see it's being zapped in the head a bunch of times. That's really cool. Elemental is actually in a good state right now. It's actually doing a lot of damage. It might be a little bit more complicated than most of other specs here to play efficiently. It's not that complicated, so it is actually an enjoyable process to go into, learning all the intricacies, all of the combos, all of the little things that work together. And I feel like you do have some build diversity. I've seen at least 2 to 3 builds that you can definitely play, so you can swap around to something that's a little bit more simple. Maybe you like to see your fire elemental all the way out, and just you're having elementals as pets. That is really, it's a really cool fantasy, especially in Dragonflight, where a lot of the story and a lot of the theme is revolved around elementals and primalists and all of that stuff. I would put it into A tier. Oh, S tier.
Yes.
Oh, you like it?
Listen, I like it a lot, and I know people were saying that in the previous to play or not to play, they were saying like, oh my god, you guys put into S tier the specs that are not like super skilled involved. It's not about that. This is a spec where it does require skill and getting into like understanding how everything works, and it's an S tier.
It's probably the most difficult spec in S tier.
Yeah, so there you go. Well, we still have Shadow Priest, which
Shadow actually,
it's not that complicated anymore.
They made it a little bit simpler this time around.
I know, but it's still. I mean, it's still one of the specs that requires a little bit more dedication to like pull off properly. Now, obviously, you'll feel like the most useful spec in the game because you have access to PI, and everybody will want you.
That is a point that we don't usually. I mean, we value performance, but we don't value it too much. But for Shadow, it's kind of a disservice to do it if we're not talking about how much value you bring to your team. Sure, you have a lot of damage, and it's probably the best spec in AoE in the game currently, probably by certain statistics. But the fact that you're adding not only Power Infusion, which everybody's gonna love you for it, but you're adding really good dispels, which are really good, and it's definitely different weeks, and then Mythic Plus and affixes and so on and so forth. You have the stamina buff, you have movement,
Mass Dispel, Vampiric Embrace with all of the passive healing and all of that purges as well, not to mention, multiple forms of CCs. This spec kind of has it all. And also another spec, which is very visually appealing to me, at least I think they really nailed, the shadow part of it and all of those nice effects. Sound, okay, maybe not...
hey man, you can pop your void form and start hearing whispers. You think you don't hear whispers, but you'll actually start hearing, they actually pick that in.
It's part of it, okay.
And it's actually really cool. I would put it in front of Demonology.
Okay, so this is at the top, of S tier. So this is a very nice form we have here. there is like in the range DPS category, there are no specs that are going into like definitely not recommending this. We can talk about Arcane a little bit more if you guys want to, but I feel like with the changes that are coming up and the fact that I'm pretty sure they're not over, so we will see probably more iterations.
Likely,
even
yeah.
Arcane will like jump up the ranks in terms of like to play or not to play. But this is from our perspective kind of how
Definitely
it
a
looks.
good time to play any of the S and A tier, and you can still have fun with the other ones, just with a little bit of a caveat.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Thank you, Patrons, for supporting the content. As always, love you guys. And also thank you, Opera GX. Make sure to click the link in the description and download it. Listen, no bullshit. We use this for quite some time now, and it's really, really cool.
yeah.
So definitely at least try it out. Works better. Trust us, it works way better than the other browsers around. Thank you for watching the video. See you in the next one. Bye, bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.